The little girl stood alone in the middle of the enormous glass office tower, clutching a wrinkled piece of paper against her chest. Her tiny shoes squeaked against the polished floor. Employees rushed past her without noticing. Some were talking on phones. Others carried folders and laptops. But the little girl didn't move. She looked frightened. She looked exhausted. And she looked far too young to be standing there by herself. Then she whispered 7 words that would change 2 lives forever. "Mom's sick, so I came instead." Before we begin, if you believe that kindness can change a life and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone you care about, and subscribe to Lifeline Corner for more emotional and inspiring stories. It was a bright spring morning in the city. Sunlight reflected from the skyscrapers and poured through the massive windows of one of the most successful companies in the country. On the top floor sat the office of billionaire CEO Rowan Sterling, a man known for building an empire from nothing. People admired him. People respected him. But very few people truly knew him. The newspapers called him a business genius. Investors called him a visionary. Employees called him demanding but fair. Yet behind the expensive suits and billion-dollar contracts was a man carrying a quiet loneliness that no amount of money could erase. 5 years earlier, Rowan had lost his wife in a tragic accident. Since then, he had buried himself in work. Every morning looked exactly the same. Meetings. Reports. Phone calls. Numbers. Success. And silence. That morning seemed no different. Rowan was preparing for an important board meeting when his assistant entered his office with an unusual expression. She looked confused. And concerned. "There's a little girl downstairs asking to see you," she explained. Rowan frowned. A little girl? At his office? It made no sense. He almost told security to handle it. But something in his assistant's voice made him pause. Minutes later, the elevator doors opened. A tiny girl stepped out. She couldn't have been older than 7. Her blonde curls were slightly messy. Her clothes were clean but worn. And she carried a folded envelope in her trembling hands. The moment Rowan saw her, he felt something unusual. Not recognition. Not familiarity. Just a strange feeling he couldn't explain. The child walked forward nervously and held out the envelope. Her small hands shook. Rowan accepted it and opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. The writing was uneven, as if the person had struggled to hold the pen. As he began reading, the room fell silent. The letter was from a woman named Naomi Hart. A woman who worked as a cleaner in one of Rowan's office buildings. She explained that she had become seriously ill and had been unable to work for weeks. Without income, she could no longer afford rent, medicine, or food. She wrote that she had tried applying for assistance but had received no help. The final lines hit Rowan the hardest. She apologized for sending her daughter. She wrote that she had no one else. And then she added one heartbreaking sentence. "If this letter reaches you, it means my daughter was brave enough to try." Rowan slowly lowered the page. The little girl stood quietly in front of him. Waiting. Hoping. Trusting. The sight stirred something deep inside him. Something he hadn't felt in years. Compassion. He knelt down to her level. The child introduced herself as Aria. She explained that her mother had become weaker every day. Some mornings Naomi couldn't even get out of bed. Aria had started making sandwiches by herself. She reminded her mother to take medicine. She helped clean their tiny apartment. And every night she pretended everything would be okay. Even when she wasn't sure it would. As Rowan listened, he felt a growing heaviness in his chest. No child should carry that burden. No child should have to become an adult before learning how to be a kid. For the first time in years, the board meeting waiting downstairs didn't seem important. Neither did the investors. Neither did the contracts. Without hesitation, Rowan cancelled his entire schedule. His executives were shocked. But Rowan didn't care. An hour later, he was sitting in the back seat of a car beside Aria as they drove across the city. The little girl pointed toward old apartment buildings and crowded streets. Eventually they arrived at a rundown complex hidden behind abandoned storefronts. The building looked tired. The paint was peeling. The elevators barely worked. The hallways smelled of damp concrete. Aria led him to a small apartment on the third floor. Inside, Rowan saw something that would stay with him forever. Naomi lay on a couch beneath a thin blanket. The room was spotless despite obvious poverty. There were books neatly stacked in corners. School drawings decorated the walls. A small vase held fresh flowers. Someone had tried very hard to create beauty inside hardship. Naomi looked shocked when she saw Rowan enter. Embarrassment flooded her face. She apologized repeatedly. She said she never wanted charity. She only wanted enough time to recover and return to work. As Rowan listened, he realized she wasn't asking for rescue. She was asking for dignity. That difference mattered. Over the next hour, he learned more about their lives. Naomi had worked multiple jobs after losing her husband years earlier. She had sacrificed everything to raise Aria. She skipped meals so her daughter could eat. She worked late nights cleaning offices while Aria slept. And despite all of it, she never complained. Rowan found himself deeply moved. Because he recognized something. The same determination that once lived inside him. The same refusal to quit. The same courage. That afternoon, Rowan made several phone calls. Doctors examined Naomi immediately. Medical specialists arranged treatment. A nutrition plan was created. Her apartment rent was paid. Utilities were restored. But Rowan did something even more important. He offered Naomi a new position within his company once she recovered. A stable job. Health insurance. Flexible hours. A future. When Naomi began crying, Rowan quietly told her she had earned the opportunity through years of hard work. This wasn't charity. It was recognition. Weeks passed. Then months. Slowly, Naomi's health improved. Color returned to her face. Strength returned to her body. And hope returned to their home. Aria returned to being a child. She spent afternoons drawing pictures. She made friends. She laughed more often. And every now and then, Rowan would receive a handmade card covered in colorful markers thanking him for helping her mother. Those cards became the most valuable items in his office. More valuable than awards. More valuable than stock certificates. More valuable than anything money could buy. For the first time in years, Rowan felt his heart healing. One sunny afternoon nearly a year later, the company hosted a family celebration for employees. Hundreds attended. Children ran across the lawn. Music played. People laughed. Naomi arrived holding Aria's hand. The little girl immediately spotted Rowan across the crowd. She ran toward him with a huge smile. Then she handed him a drawing. It showed 3 people standing beneath a bright blue sky. One was Naomi. One was Aria. And one was Rowan. Above them were words written in large colorful letters. "Thank you for saving our family." Rowan stared at the drawing. His eyes filled with tears. Because he finally understood something. He had believed he was helping them. But in many ways, they had saved him too. They had reminded him that success means nothing if it isn't shared. That kindness creates ripples far beyond what we can see. That sometimes the greatest investments aren't made in companies. They're made in people. As this story comes close to its end, if it has touched your heart in any way, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to Lifeline Corner. Your support helps bring more inspiring stories to people around the world. Special request: comment below with the words "Kindness changes lives" if you believe one act of compassion can transform someone's future. Years later, Aria would stand on a stage as the top student in her graduating class. Her mother would sit proudly in the audience. And Rowan would be there too. Not as a billionaire CEO. Not as a powerful businessman. But as family. When reporters later asked Rowan what the greatest achievement of his life had been, many expected him to mention one of his companies. Instead, he smiled and looked toward Naomi and Aria. Then he gave an answer nobody expected. He said that the best decision he ever made happened on an ordinary morning when a frightened little girl walked into his office carrying a letter. Because sometimes the smallest visitors bring the biggest miracles. And sometimes a child brave enough to say, "Mom's sick, so I came instead," can remind the world that kindness is still alive. The end.